glad to be back once again for our last two firesides today.
Me too, and I'm definitely very excited to dive right into our next talk. So without further ado, let's invite our next speaker, Dr. Sanjoy Paul. Dr. Sanjoy Paul is a recognized in the industry as an innovator and disruptive entrepreneur in networking, AI, and IoT. Dr. Paul has held multiple senior executive positions and has been CTO in 3 venture-backed startups. He's now managing director of Accenture, ex-CEO of Almawiz, a startup transforming digital contact center using conversational AI and deep learning, and ACS faculty at San Jose State University and Rice University. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Sanjoy Paul, who will be starting us off with a small presentation about conversational AI, followed by a fireside chat led by Isita.
So thank you all. I really appreciate being invited to speak in this esteemed forum. And I'm sure you have been listening to multiple talks throughout the day, and hope you still have some energy left to listen to one of the final presentations. Just making sure that you can see my screen.
Yes, we can. We're good to go.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'll talk about a small presentation called Cognitive Customer Care. This is the future of customer engagement from the point of view of a startup, and in the process, try to address some of the questions that have been raised by the forum. So first thing is, when you want to start a company, the company should have a purpose. And the purpose of this startup that I'm going to talk about is to help businesses increase their revenue by dynamically improving customer engagement while drastically reducing cost. So it cannot get any better. Your top line or revenue is going to increase. Your expenses are going to come down. At the same time, your customers are going to be happy. So that's a good purpose. Now let's see from the customer service point of view, what exactly is the problem that we are trying to solve. So here the problem is there are various enterprises which are in specialized domains like manufacturing and high tech, who spend a lot of money to employ subject matter experts to respond to customer queries 24/7. And these questions are not simple questions. These questions are very domain specific questions. For example, a question from a manufacturer of electrical products could be, can you tell me why my transformer is heating up? So you see that it's not a question like, what is my checking account balance? So you need to understand the domain to be able to answer these questions. And this is where these companies employ subject matter experts who are expensive resources. And keeping them for 3 different shifts to cover 24/7 is a very expensive proposition. So some enterprises are trying to reduce the cost by replacing human agents with chatbots and interactive voice response. But I don't have to tell you that our experience of working with chatbots and interactive voice response systems is not up to our expectations, to say the least. Why? Because the cost reductions that you get by using chatbots is at the expense of reduced customer satisfaction. The chatbots are not up to par. They cannot interact at the level of subject matter experts. The chatbots reduce the flexibility of interaction. And also the IVRs are very long and complicated menus for simple tasks. There have been situations for me when I have a very simple question to ask, but the IVR system has 15 things in the menu. I have to keep listening to all the 15 things, one after the other and after the other. And after listening to 15 of them, I have to remember which one my problem should fit in. And most often than not, I'll pick the wrong category and I have to repeat the whole process again. I mean, this is definitely not customer satisfaction. But some enterprises are a little bit more proactive. They're saying that this is not going to work. Let's take advantage of a new technology like conversational AI platforms. They're in the right direction. But to take advantage of these conversational AI platforms, these are platforms. This is not a solution to your problem. So for example, what I mean by that is I'm a bank and customers are calling me about how can I get a small business loan, then a conversational AI platform is not enough. Conversational AI platform gives you the foundation. Then I have to write or develop the business process on top of that. That is, when a customer calls for a service loan, for a small business loan, these are the next steps, questions to be asked, interacted, information to be collected, these things have to be checked. So there's an entire business process that has to be built on top of the conversational AI platform. So typically, the companies who take advantage of the conversational AI platform, they have to partner with system integrators who will build a specialized domain-specific process on top of the conversational AI platform. And that is expensive. And once you do that, that increases the cost because system integrators are not cheap. And second of all, it delays the time to market because it takes time to take the solution to market. Now, this startup is trying to address these problems in the following way. So what is the solution? The solution is, let's reduce cost by augmenting domain-specific SMEs with intelligent virtual SMEs. So what do you mean by intelligent virtual SME? Intelligent virtual SME means that the SME, the virtual agent, should be able to interact with the customer in an intelligent way and be able to understand the context in the deep domain manner. For example, if a customer says, why is my transformer heating up? This intelligent agent should be able to understand, oh, the transformer belongs to this category, and these are the possible ways transformer can get heated. So it's a domain expertise. Somebody who does not have the domain will not be able to answer that. You want the virtual agent to be able to respond contextually and intelligently like human experts. You want to help customers with troubleshooting based on the enterprise knowledge base. So that's another thing. That is, when it's one thing to understand what the customer is asking for, the other thing is to respond intelligently with the right answer. To respond intelligently to the right answer, I'll show you that it's a very complex process for any enterprise, whether it's a bank or any industrial organization. There are so many sources of information. Based on the question, to figure out which source should I go to get the information. And even if I go to the source, where exactly is the answer? So that is a very cumbersome process, and that requires interaction with the backend and integration with the backend, and that is a cumbersome process. And we want to reduce the cost. That startup wants to reduce the cost. And not only that, we want the virtual agent to learn and improve continuously. Typically in the beginning, when you start off interacting, maybe you can solve 10–15% of the questions, but over time it becomes more and more intelligent. It learns so that it can intelligently respond, and slowly it can answer more and more questions. The second is, how do you achieve this startup achieves faster go-to-market? It achieves faster go-to-market by saying that, hey, when we give you a solution, it's not just a conversational AI platform. On top of that, I also have a business process template which is productized. So for you, you just have to configure the business process template as opposed to develop the code for the business process. As a result, it's a much shorter process. You can do the configuration of the business processes in a week or a couple of weeks, as opposed to the development, which takes 6 months or even more. And there's no cost of integration with the enterprise data source. So this is another thing, that is, you have a product which comes almost prepackaged, integrated with different sources of information. Otherwise, you have to again engage system integrators to do integration with different heterogeneous backend systems, and that takes cost. And finally, what this company improves faster go-to-market, improves the speed to go-to-market, is by providing a productized solution with configurable business processes in manufacturing high-tech sector, as opposed to project-based solution. Project-based solution is system integrators will do projects. Now, how to improve customer satisfaction? Customer engagement is improved by helping customers resolve their issues on their own, self-service. Allowing customers to use their preferred channel. we are not restricting the customer to use a phone or email or chat, or SMS. You can use any channel that you want. You use the preferred channel. Majority of customers can use the preferred language of interaction. Well, in the US, it's English. You go to Europe, you have French, German, Italian, Spanish, at least. You go to Asia, there's Cantonese and then Japanese. You go to India, there's Hindi, Bengali, Tamil, Malayalam, Marathi, Gujarati, and so on and so forth. So this startup is saying that we'll allow the customer to interact in the major language of interaction. That's a very powerful statement. And finally, you transfer the customer context across channels so they don't have to repeat the same information. How often did you start an interaction with a customer agent on a chat, and then you call up the 800 number and you have to repeat the whole thing from the very beginning? Ideally, if I've done a conversation with the chatbot up to a certain point, I've shared some information. When I go to when I call up the customer service will know that, hey, these things have been discussed. I don't have to start over again. Let's ask the questions from that point on. So that's customer satisfaction. And you seamlessly transfer to a human agent when the virtual agent cannot deal with the question. And finally, this is listening to customers' voice and opinion and understand the customer sentiment. For example, if you can figure out if the customer is unhappy, customers getting irritated, and based on that, you change the style of conversation. So this is how you try to improve the customer satisfaction. So you reduce cost, it's a faster go-to-market, and improve customer engagement. So this is the solution proposed by the startup. Now let's take a look at how does the solution look like at a very high level. Simplified view looks like this. So there are three agents. There's a customer, there's a virtual agent, and there's a live human agent. So customer can reach out through web chat, through mobile application, through social channels, through Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, can reach out through email, phone call, or SMS. Regardless of the channel the customer reaches out to, the virtual agent is the first point of contact, and virtual agent will try to resolve the customer query. And this is non-trivial because now the customer could speak. So you have to understand the nuances of speech, figure out what the customer is asking for. I'll talk about that in little details, and that's where significant part of AI gets involved. And after the conversation, we figure out what the customer is asking for, but that's the first part. The second part is you have to respond. How do you respond? So this is another thing called insight engine. I'll talk about that later. So the virtual agent is like, think of this for now, is a magic box that virtual agent can provide the customer's intent to insight engine, and insight engine will come back with the most relevant and contextual answer. Now virtual agent can go back to the customer and respond with that. If the virtual agent is not able to solve the customer's query, then it seamlessly transfers it over to the human agent. And it's not just a transfers it to the human agent, but it transfers it to the human agent with enough context. So human agent knows what interaction already the customer had with virtual agent, so the customer doesn't have to repeat it to the human agent. And agent will also know what information has already been shared with the customer, where exactly is it's getting stuck. An agent can also reach out to the insight engine just like the virtual agent can to retrieve relevant answer and get back to the customer. So this is how the overall cognitive customer care solution looks like. Now, a little bit about insight engine. This is something which is gaining huge traction in the industry. We call it insight engine, but it's basically, if you look into the literature, it's called a knowledge graph, multi-dimensional knowledge graph. So what this insight engine does, as I was saying, that if you go to an enterprise will have various sources of information. A customer asking a question, that question's response could be in FAQ, or it could be in a technical specification. If it's a car, then technical spec of Audi or a BMW or Mercedes or whatever the car is, the technical specifications are there. Troubleshooting guides, if something goes wrong, if the tire loses pressure or the brake loses traction, all the details are there in the troubleshooting guides. Engineering design documents are there. Then customer call center log, what the customer called about in the past. Product purchase and warranty information, CRM and other systems of record, historical records. So these are not only different systems, but actually not only different sources of information, but they're kept in different physical systems with different technologies. And as a result, it's a non-trivial task in an enterprise to go and integrate all of those things. So what this startup is doing in the Insight Engine is essentially taking all the data from all these sources and creating a massive multi-dimensional knowledge graph. That is, you're sourcing information and storing the information in a multi-dimensional knowledge graph. Look up the knowledge graph. It's a in thing, is basically supported by Google, for example, started by Google in some sense. And this becomes a single source of truth. Now, when the customer asks a query, you actually go and traverse the knowledge graph to retrieve the most relevant information and give it back to the customer. So this is a very powerful concept. It's called Insight Engine for the reason that I just explained. Now let's delve a little deeper to show you the reach of AI, how extensively AI is used in the solution, and multiple touch points of AI. So I'll explain that with a phone call, a customer calling up an 800 number, and the phone call comes to a PSTN network. It goes into PSTN gateway. I'm not going into details of that. And here you can use connectors from different companies, which will take the voice call and take it to the cognitive customer care center. So this is a software service which is hosted in the cloud. So when the speech comes in, so you have to convert the speech to text. So this is like you recognize and transcribe the speech to text is called ASR. So the speech is converted to text. And once you convert to text, you do natural language processing to identify the various entities in the speech. And from that, you figure out, oh, the customer is saying, where is my order? Or track my package, or order status, or when can I expect my stuff? So this is done at this stage after you understand the speech. And this is where significant amount of AI is needed. AI is needed because, people speak the same thing in English in different ways. You have to understand that all these 10 ways of asking the question is the same. They mean the same semantically. Second, different people have different accents. Depending on the same English can be spoken in a British accent, in Australian accent, in European accent, Indian accent, and so on and so forth. And being able to understand what is being said, that itself is where AI is significantly used. And after you do natural language processing, this is where you are basically extracting the entities from English statement. That's natural language processing. AI is used significantly there. And then comes NLU, natural language understanding. This is where you are trying to extract the intent. And extract the intent could be something like intent is, hey, he's asking for status, and asking for status of a given order. So this is the intent that is extracted by natural language understanding. And this is fed into the Insight and the knowledge graph. Now you traverse the knowledge graph based on this context and retrieve the right information. And information could be status, shipped 7/15/2017. And then it comes to natural language generator, which takes this and converts this into shift, something that humans understand. When I'm calling an agent is supposed to talk back in English and not in JSON, for example. So it says, converts that, natural language generator converts that into shift on 5th July 2017. And then you convert that text to speech and goes back to the client. So this is, you see that at every step, AI is involved. AI is involved here in the speech to text. AI is involved in NLP and NLU. Huge impact of AI deep learning in knowledge graph traverse. This is where the creation of knowledge graph itself is hugely dependent on AI. Then the semantic response and NLG, natural language generation, this is where AI is involved. And finally, text to speech also involves AI. So AI is everywhere to make this cognitive customer say. So let's give some example case study. Where is this used? How is this used? Is this as an exercise as a project or actually used in practice? It's actually used in practice. So this is an example case study for a Fortune 500 manufacturing company's imaging and optical products. The company needed to provide 24/7 customer service by enabling customers to personally book toners and register complaints. So people buy the product, and when the toners go wrong or when they have complaints, they actually call up. And this is where they have human agents, and that was expensive. Now they want to replace that with a virtual agent, which can actually deal with these questions over phone or over WhatsApp, and virtual agent can resolve these queries in real time. And what has happened is this is actually deployed, and it exceeded expectations on business KPIs, including customer satisfaction level is 90% of the customers as either are fully satisfied, or a score of 1 to 5 is either 5 or 4, and it reduced the cost per call by 50%. So this is what you see, that your operation costs are reduced and also customer satisfaction is improved. Now let's look at the second example use case. This is for electrical equipment company. I was giving an example of transformer. They have all kinds of electrical equipment, complex equipment. And what they were doing is they wanted to provide product diagnostics over phone. And this is where you needed the expensive SMEs. And they wanted to replace the experimental technology, which will enable them to have a virtual agent which can provide consistent and accurate responses in real time. So this is where, again, the startup provided the technology, which was able to respond to the customer queries or product related questions in real time with the same level of confidence, with the same average handling time as a real agent. So these are the entire, I told you the entire story from the purpose of the company to what is the problem you're trying to solve, what is the solution, and what is the uniqueness of the solution, how the solution is architected, where is exactly AI used, and then what are the use cases, and what is the benefit the customer gets from the use cases. And this is the whole story of how you build a startup from a concept to the product, deploy it, and get a feedback from the customer and actually make money. So this is my presentation, and happy to take questions after this. Thank you.
That was a very insightful peek into the widespread industry applications of conversational AI. And now we will be moving into our next segment, which is a fireside chat on entrepreneurship and innovation.
Okay.
So let's dive right into it. Evidently, with your experience turning ideas into successful businesses, how do you go about productionizing research?
So I told Isita when I saw this first question that this is a loaded question, and it happens in spirals. Let me just tell you what I mean by that. That the whole process will start with a core technology idea. Could be like, for example, technology idea for us could be a conversational AI, or it could start with a core business problem. Business problem could be, oh, customer satisfaction service is so bad, can I improve it? So these are two different things. One is different by technology, other is different by the business problem. But you have to have a core idea that what you're trying to do first. First advice, based on my experience, is when you are a technologist, especially a student with very good with system building, you get excited about building the product. So my first advice is don't keep on building the product just like that, because we try to get, I put myself in the same shoes. When I was young, I started building a product. I got so excited. Hey, if I think this is necessary, customers must need it, and kept building the product, building features and features of the product, only to realize that, hey, I built it in a way nobody needs it. So you get egotistic that, hey, I must be right, but most of the times you realize that, hey, that what you thought was not right. So what I'm saying is, don't keep on building the features of the product, but you start off with building a rapid prototype. I call it prototype. Look up the term called prototype. It's pre-prototype, and which can be done fairly quickly, and does not have to even write a piece of code. It could be just click through demos just to demonstrate the concept, which looks pretty much like a real product. And the objective here is to get a feel or sense from the market, validate the interest. Is it something that customers really want? And then when you see that there is some interest from the customer, then you convert the prototype into a prototype, and you do the prototype in such a way that it's not a throwaway prototype. You develop the prototype as an extensible form of a product that you could extend as and when is necessary based on the customer feedback. Then when you have to get the customer feedback, the first question that you ask is, who is my customer? And trust me, many times that you don't know who the customer is. You got excited because of the technology, you got excited of the product, but who is going to buy it? Customer means somebody will buy it and pay you for it, not somebody pat your back and say, hey, it's a good job. No, you want somebody to pay for it. So you have to find out who would be the customer who would be willing to pay for your product. Very important. Very upfront, you have to think the customer, because your product features will be shaped by your customer. I give an example. Sometimes you think that you have the right customer, but may not be the right customer. Let me explain the context of the conversational AI customer service. So in the beginning, you thought that the best customer would be businesses who will be rolling out the customer service care, right? Because you have the end-to-end solution, as I explained. But as you start talking to businesses, you realize that businesses are not sitting idle. They already have some partners with whom they're offering, customer service. Then you realize, hey, maybe your customer is not the businesses. Your customer is those who are providing solution to businesses. So I'm saying that it's very important to understand who is the buyer. And based on who the buyer is, you have to design your product appropriately. And sometimes you lose track of who the buyer, customer, everything gets mingled, and you end up building something nobody cares about. Also, you need to know who your competitors are. You build something and you need to know who you are competing with and why are you special. And I'd say that after that, most important thing is early engagement. You have to find a potential friendly customer who is willing to try it out. And that's when you sort of make your product a little bit more robust. And once you do that, then you repeat that with potential customers. You do marketing, socialize it. But one other advice I'll tell you is be very conservative with spending money. Because money will go faster than you think. So be very, very conservative as you deal with money, and be very prudent in what you want to build, how you want to build, how you expand the team. So the key thing I'll say is the deployment is the key. Get the initial customer and build your product on the back of that customer, and do the best job you can. It's a long-winded answer to your question because the question was loaded, I told you.
And since our focus is the target customers buying our product, what is the process of creating an effective go-to-market strategy?
See, the go-to-market strategy for a startup is also very tricky. Now, why it's tricky? Because you have to find out that how you will go to market, in the sense that do you go to market on your own or do you go to market with somebody else? What I mean by that is, again, in the context of the customer care service that I talked about, I'll explain that. So you find out the product partners. Product partners meaning that there's some products which are already in the field. So when you took customer care, you realize there are products from Avaya, Cisco, Genesys, they're already doing customer service. But they don't have the things that we have. So the question is, now can they be the partners? Can we partner with them to go to market? So other partner could be, you start thinking, can there be other sales partners or partners like, let's say some system integrator who are trying to offer a service to their customers and they don't have the technology, but they have the salespeople. So they're more than willing to partner with startup to leverage their sales channel to reach out to the customers, because it's a win-win. They can generate more revenue and they can give you a piece of the pie. So then you have to think that if I have to go with them, then what should be my go-to-market strategy? And third could be the strategic investor. So there are many companies who have invest in startups. Every system integrator, name it, whether it's Accenture, Wipro, Infosys, Deloitte, Capgemini, everybody have their venture wing and they invest in startups. So if they can be a strategic partner, then you decide how to go to market with them. So once you identify the partners that you want to go to market with, you have to define a strategy, keeping that in mind. And for yourself, there is no substitute for early customer engagement. So engage with the early customer. That's the best, even if you're a friendly customer. I cannot tell you that how much you learn from that and how much it brings you back to ground. You have technologically, you want to experiment all kinds of fancy things, then realize, hey, they don't need any of the 1 through 10 things. They just need 1 and 2. And maybe that's what the market wants. So early customer engagement is good. Keep that in mind for go-to-market.
That makes sense. And since you emphasize the importance of leveraging different teams, how do you leverage your development teams and technology to generate more value at your startup?
See, the team is very diverse. You need the different kinds of constituents to make your startup successful. And there's the product team who will continuously vet the product with customers. You have the marketing team who will try to gain the mind share, who want to poll the market, what's happening. You need the sales team. And my recommendation is when you have sales team, let them do even small deals. Even if you lose money in the beginning, so be it. But doing the deals is very important, sales team. And then since you asked more on the engineering team, so from the technology perspective, there should be the bulk of the team should be engineering team, and very small part will be R&D team. That technology team focus should be the current product and maybe the immediate next product, next release of the product, where the goal should be so robust and so rich from the user experience perspective that customer is happy. So goal is to make the product foolproof. If the product in the market starts making mistakes here and there, does not work, if there's anything, you get a negative vibe and very difficult to get out of negative vibe. Then you start saying, oh, these guys don't know what a product is. Make it so robust it cannot go wrong. Even whatever features you have, make it very tight. And engineering team should focus on that, make it robust and stable, and make it future proof. And build is the best engineered product. Engineering is different from R&D. But R&D is also necessary, because R&D, research and development, necessary to keep an eye on what's happening in the market. Because sometimes you get so caught up with your technology, you lose track of what's happening in the market, and you fall behind. So this is very important to keep track of what's happening in the market and do your R&D appropriately, so that that lays the foundation for the product roadmap going into the future.
Okay. Taking into account that we do need the R&D team and a robust prototype, how do you go about implementing new ideas since they can be perceived as risks? So as a leader, how do you balance risks and meeting goals?
So this is always challenging, and regardless of the company you work for, whether a small company or large company, there'll be a tussle. You could either belong to a camp who believes in R&D, or you could belong to a camp which does not believe in R&D, in the two extremes. So regardless of opinion, you'll get a pushback. But I think that based on my experience, the best advice would be to take calculated risk. Yeah, there's a risk always in trying, but should be calculated risk in the sense that, and when you take a risk, when you try out new things, the new things should be aligned with the future roadmap of the product. So when you're doing a product, it's very easy to go off on the left, on the right, on the north, and south, because there's so many things happening. You get excited as a technologist to, hey, take it in different directions. But once you have a clear direction of where you want to go with the product, you have a roadmap. So align your risk with the roadmap. So anything that you do in R&D, that should at least be useful as you develop the product in future. And it should be a calculated risk, and probably you should calculate some ROI. So to convince the people that I invest so much, but potentially I get 50x, 100x return. So I think that's how you leverage your R&D team.
That makes sense. And moving into a more generic sense, what are some unique challenges that you came across as an entrepreneur?
So there are multiple challenges, and because most of the time as an entrepreneur you fail, most of the times you don't succeed. And I have failed multiple times. So I know the challenges that I faced. And every time, interestingly, for the first time you fail, you think this, I learned something from this time. Next time I'll not fail. Yes, you don't fail in that dimension, but you fail in some other dimension. So I just wanted to share with you the various avenues where you could fail so that you are aware of that. The first thing I say, I keep repeating the customer. That's very important. That is, finding the right market segment and right customers, I think is very, very challenging. It's very easy to be excited about technology, but who is the right buyer? Who is willing to pay for it? And finding the right person is very challenging. Right customer is very challenging. And finding the pilot customer is very challenging. You could build the best product under the sun, but if you don't have any pilot customer, it's going to fail guaranteed. So challenge is, how do I find the right customer? How do I find a pilot customer? I'm telling you that this will be the biggest challenge in any startup. If you do it from scratch, if you're the founder, this is a challenge that you'll face, number one. Number two, what is this confidence? That you could build something great. It's very good to reassure yourself it's the best product under the sun, but you don't get confidence until somebody else tells you, hey, cool, it's a great product. So you have to build the confidence. To build the confidence, you have to gain the mind share of the customers, and you have to generate some initial revenue. I was saying that, well, do the first deal at a loss, doesn't matter. But the fact that somebody has given you money, it has gone into your bank account for the company, that itself is a testimonial that, hey, gives you the confidence that, hey, maybe somebody is paying me means it should not be your parents or your friends. It's somebody other than that paying you. That means that it's actually in the right direction, gives you the confidence. And that's a challenge. That is very easy to get convinced yourself, but getting confidence somebody else saying that it's a good product is a challenge, and focus on that. Third is the ecosystem. To be successful in a business is not just you or your company, is the ecosystem. Ecosystem means that you have to build relations. You have to build relations with the right people who can help you find potential customers. Businesses, you're building the product is not for charity. You want to make money. So you have to have customers, and somebody should tell you, hey, go there, go potential customer, or try him, or try her, try that company. So somebody has to give you directions to where the potential customers could be. And that building relationship is very important. And you create a relevant ecosystem of partners, customers, and the service providers. That's important. As I was saying, could be a product partnership or a service partnership, a sales partnership. This partnership is important. And last but not the least is differentiation. It's very easy to think that you have a differentiated product. Why? Because you look at the competition, and competition tells you that these are the features of my product. They say, hey, look, these guys have X, Y, and Z, and I have P, Q, R, S, T. These guys don't have it. But you are not comparing apples with apples. You're comparing apples with oranges. I learned it the hard way. You're comparing your product of today that nobody knows except for you versus somebody's product which you don't know. They're showing whatever is there on the website. That's what you're comparing with. So it's very difficult to know exactly where your differentiation is. The more you know of differentiation, the more you're able to convince your customers. I think those are the main challenges that you face if you want to build a business.
Okay, well, keeping these challenges in mind, given the different nature of startups, what is the most valuable lesson that you have learned in your experience as CTO or CEO?
The first is don't get carried away with the cool technology. This is a very common thing. I'm telling you that depending on many people are there. Most of you are very bright students that I've run into, and I'm sure you have great ideas, but it's very natural for people to get carried away with the cool technology. But technology is just a small piece in the whole ecosystem. So it's definitely a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition. Second, I'll say that if you want to be an entrepreneur, you learn the basics of business. Technology is just one thing, right? You want to talk to venture capital person, it starts talking about the pre-money valuation, post-money valuation, what is the share of the, how much share they'll get, how much equity somebody is giving, how much is debt versus how much is equity. You should know the basics of business. Otherwise, you'll be lost. The third thing is you should know your customers. I keep saying that it's very important to know your customers. If you don't know the customer, you're fuzzy about your customers, you lose. Learn the basics of marketing. It's very important how you market. End of the day, you have to gain market share. I've seen people who don't have very good product, but their marketing is so strong, they beat out products which are even better in the market. So getting the mind share is marketing important. You learn the basics of that and learn exactly what it takes to sell. You don't have to sell, but you realize that how difficult it is to sell. As a technologist, you think technology is the difficult part. I'll say technology is the easiest part. The difficult part is convincing somebody to part with some money from his or her pocket. When somebody takes out money from his or her pocket and gives it to you, that means that's the difficult part. And selling is difficult. And I was telling Isita, the first experience I had to how the salespeople incentivized was in my first startup in New York. So I was the CTO, and I was supposed to give a talk to the salespeople to telling them what the product is all about. So I was a little late because I was talking to a customer, and then I walk into a conference room full of salespeople, and my eyes open up, say, "Oh my God, this is how the salespeople operate." So the guy, Mike, who was the VP of sales, he had a bundle, a huge bundle of $5, $10 bills, a huge bundle, it's just like a book. I said, "What the hell is he doing with that?" And then asking questions that what is the two most differentiating features of EdgeStream, which is our product. And people raise their hand. Whoever gets the right answer gets the $5 and $10 and things like that. So incentive is very different with cash. So I'm saying that you understand the fundamentals of sales as well.
Okay, since we're almost done, I'm just going to open it up to everybody and asking, what advice do you have for prospective or current student entrepreneurs?
So I'll just say that, well, technology is very important, but to be a successful entrepreneur, there's a lot more than technology. And I think that you should prep yourself with all the other skills that you have. Second thing is, if you want to build a company, the team is very important. You surround yourself with people with complementary skills. Sometimes sometimes I used to think that I can do everything. I can do technology, I can do sales, I can do marketing, I can do everything. To some extent you can, but you are not the best. I realized that the people who are far better than me in sales, people far better than in marketing. So you complement yourself with people who have the core skills. Only then you'll succeed, because everybody fires with their core competencies. So it's very important to build a team like that. And other thing is you get an early customer feedback. I keep repeating that. And most importantly, it's a journey, not a quick thing. Don't think that you get in there, do a startup, become a millionaire, get out. It's not going to happen. So it's unless you're really, really lucky, COVID happens and Zoom stock goes through the roof. That's a different story. But in general, it doesn't happen. So it's a journey and not a quick thing.
Okay, well, I definitely learned a lot. Thank you so much, Dr. Paul. We really appreciate your time with us today.
And now we'll be having our last break for today. I know that we've had a very long day.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
I'll leave. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
So before our last speaker, as I mentioned, we will be having a quick break. And we're going to have our last and final fireside chat with the student entrepreneur. So getting a student perspective on potentially starting your own business. And her name is Bee Chan. So that will be right after the break.